This is one of my sermons, so there's a lot of scripture. So I'm going to go straight into prayer, and we're going to hop into it. Lord God, I ask that you have your hand upon this message. Lord, remove me entirely from this. Speak through me. Let me be only a vessel here. Do not let me fail. Let me hear you clearly. My God, I ask that your word fall upon the hearts of your people. And Lord, I ask that it reach into next week, that it guide us as we go into these coming weeks. Lord, I thank you for your goodness and your grace. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. You may be seated. So this was one of those sermons that changed very rapidly this morning, multiple times. So we're just going to go after it. I know what the message is, so we're going to stick to that and just pray to the Lord that he leads and this works out. Amen. All right? Want to have it any other way. We're going to talk about something that's very important today. We're going to talk about passion. And we're specifically going to use Samson as an illustration of passion, okay? Now, most people don't think of Samson, they don't think of passion. What do you think of? A strong, burly man that is a warrior, right? A little what? A little dumb. Actually, he's quite clever. He's actually quite clever. So Samson is not only strong, but he's sent by God. He is a servant of the Lord, all right? He's immensely strong. Actually, the city gate that he rips off is they estimate it to be about 5 tons. So the city gate that he ripped off and carried it to the top of a hill was about 10,000 pounds, okay, in that day. Now, he's very, very strong, and he's actually quite clever. He's actually intellectually challenging. He makes riddles and stuff like that, so we can tell that he's intellectually challenged to an extent, right? And he's very crafty, as we'll get into a little bit later. But you see, him being smart and him being crafty and him being strong doesn't matter at all unless he has a drive, right? If you can't get up and walk into what you're intended to, it doesn't matter what you possess. Okay? And if you read the story of Samson, he has great passion. Not always for things he should. All right? This is an area he failed, but at first it was a stirring of the Lord, and we'll get into that later. Now, Samson was born to a barren woman. During the time the Philistines had complete control of the country. And he was a Nazarite, which means from birth he would not be able to drink wine, eat anything unclean, or shave his head, cut his hair whatsoever. Right. These were the rules that the angel of the Lord spoke to his mother before she became pregnant with him. So from birth he walked as this. I need you to know that because I think everybody knows the story of the temple, right? Where he pulls the pillars and the temple falls. Right. But not everybody thinks about the rest of the story. And it's about 4 chapters in Judges. And we're going to focus on the other stories. We're going to focus on things that people might not know. And we're going to try to illuminate some of this passion, some of this drive, some of this angst that gets stirred up in him. And see, passion is an uncontrollable emotion, or very difficult to control. So it means that you're so overwhelmed by something that you have a hard time controlling a reaction, right? You're so enveloped, so on fire for something that you have to actively work to stop yourself from acting. And I know that we have very many hard workers here. So I'm not saying, hey, get after it. What I'm saying is I want stirred up even more. There's more that I can do. I can still find myself where I'm not immediately going to people. All right? And I asked the Lord for compassion in the fast not long ago. If you haven't done it, please do it. It's wild. I found myself at tables with people that I'd never expect praying for them in public, just because I felt overwhelmed. I had an overwhelming passion that I started to act on before I even realized what I was doing. I was already at that table going, so we're going to talk about getting stirred up in that passion. And I'm hoping that the Lord reveals why this is so important and stirs you up in it and gets you a little bit more excited about going out of your comfort zone, a little less controlling of your own emotions, and a little willing to be made a fool of. Okay? All right, so we're going to start immediately in Judges 14:1. Now, like I said, be patient. I bounce around to a lot of scripture here. And I think just going through the story is probably, verse by verse, is probably the best way to do it. I can elaborate on some things, share some things. I know some people have a hard time just reading it for themselves. So, now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah, the daughters of the Philistines. And so he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, therefore, get her for me as a wife. All right, so this is a problem right away. Because he's sent by God to deliver Israel from the Philistines. And now he's fallen in love with a girl, a daughter of the Philistines. Then his father and mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistine? So he says exactly what he's on his mind, and he doesn't sugarcoat it, right? He goes, you're sent to here for us, and yet you're going to our enemy for a bride. And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. So Samson was a bit of a brute, to an extent, right? He was very led by passion. He was very emotional, okay? He's seen something and he did it, and generally didn't ask questions. And this gets him in trouble later, right? We gotta have a little bit on both sides, right? We gotta be able to control the things that are obnoxious, but we need to be able to step out in faith occasionally, right? But his father and mother did not know. Oh, hold on a second. Yes. But his father and mother did not know that it was the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at the time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So believe it or not, this passion, this drive that was sending him to a Philistine woman for a bride was what God was using to start a war. He stirred something up in his servant.
Yes, he did.
And he said, that one's the one I want. And he goes, well, such is the time as this for war. God was trying to get him ready. This fight had to start somewhere. He had to get Samson out of his comfort zone. He had to start moving through him in power. And so he sent him to his very enemy. And so Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyard of Timnah. Now, to his surprise, is everybody aware of this young lion that attacks them?
Yes.
Okay. Now, to his surprise, the young lion came roaring against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart as one would have torn apart a young goat. Though he had nothing in his hand, but he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Okay. There's an implantation of passion in Samson for a woman. Because of that happening, he is then led into an area where he reaches his first battle. If you remember, David fought what before he fought Goliath? A lion and a bear. God was leading Samson to his first fight. What he needed to test Samson. He needed to get Samson to be aware of his strength. He needed to bring him confidence, faith, and trust in God at some point. And we oftentimes fight these little battles in this walk that are meant for the bigger battle down the road. Do you understand?
Right.
And so he showed Samson just how strong he was in this moment. And so then he went down and talked to the woman. So he just kills the thing and lays it off to the side. And then he goes down and talks to the woman, and she pleases Samson well. After some time, when he returned to her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. How does that make any sense? Because this is actually an act of God. Okay? In reality, that thing would just rot, it would smell, everything would stay away from it. It might have some beetles or whatever. So why was there honey? I think he was reflecting on the battle he had already won. Because he turned aside to go see the lion. So he obviously thought about it. He was thinking about that battle. What if it was to show him that what he had done was in God's sight? What is it to reward him for trusting in God and believing in his word? What if it was to show him that that his passion is not for naught, that it's because he is leading him to do it? And so he finds this honey in the lion, and behold, he took some of it in his hands and went along eating. And when he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they also ate. But he did not let them know that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. Because that's a little weird, right?
Good thing.
And so his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there, for young men used to do so. And as it happened, when they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. So this is something I believe was very traditional at the time. Essentially, you were set up to marry. They would send a whole bunch of groomsmen to a feast for you, and they represented you and accompanied you. And then Samson said to them, "Let me pose a riddle to you." This is why I said it. He's much smarter than you think. "If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing." Who knows that is extremely expensive at this time? That's very costly. Most people only have one garment. So you wash it, you put it back on. Okay? "If you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing." And they said to him, "Pose your riddle that we might hear it." And he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." This is a guy that can rip off a gate wall and walk up a hill with it, and yet he's posing riddles and intellectually thinking on this, having fun. He's crafty. He's very crafty. And nobody gives him that. Nobody, whenever they talk about Samson, is like he's a crafty individual. It's actually scary. Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle, but it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Samson's wife, "Entice your husband that he may explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire." That's how much it costs to be able to provide him all these 30 garments and 30 changes of clothing. "Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is it not so?" And then Samson's wife wept on him and said, "You only hate me. You do not love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me." So basically, she's trying to keep her and her father safe. She should absolutely do that. Here's the thing that drives me insane about this whole thing. Her name is never mentioned. She started a war in which Israel overcame the Philistine army, and yet her name is never mentioned in this. Isn't that wild? And he said, Look, I have not explained it to my father, nor my mother, why should I explain it to you?" And she wept on him 7 days while her feast lasted. So all 7 days she punishes him. And it happened on the 7th day that he told her, because she pressed him so much. Then he explained the riddle to the sons of her people. And so the men of the city said to him the 7th day as the sun went down, "What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?" Now look at his response. This is not something he thinks of. This is something he just states. And he said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, and you would have not solved my riddle." Which means if you didn't walk in my shoes, you wouldn't have solved my riddle. The only way you could have been able to answer my riddle is if you did everything that I did. Because even my father and mother did not know. And so he knows immediately that it was his wife that told him, right? He's led by passion again and again and again and again, and that's what I want to get to. There's nothing that stops him once he gets going. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who had explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, who was his best man. You understand, so he loses this riddle. He knows that he has something that he has to pay back. He's so angered by it that he goes and kills 30 Philistines, and then takes all the spoil and goes and presents it to him. That is the start of a war. That is the start of this war. I love that it's always worded, and the Spirit of God came upon him mightily. Which means, it implies, that most of your passions in life are actually God-driven, as long as they're for God's purpose. Correct? And if we're keeping Him in mind, and we are abiding in Him as we should, most of our passions should theoretically be in the will of God. This is another quiet one. All right, we're not going to go too much farther, and then I'm going to kind of break this down. After a while, in time of wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat. And he said, "Let me go into my wife and into her room," and her father would not permit him to go. Her father said, I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. Therefore, I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead. So he's trying to reconcile with him because he knows this is probably a very bad thing. And Samson said to them, "This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them." So once again, passion is built up in him, anger. Specifically against the Philistines. Again and again and again, because what is God trying to do? Get him to move his hand against the Philistines. Instead, he falls in love with them and wants to marry them, but he has to continue to evoke him, he has to continue to provoke him and push him and guide him and put a fire in him to get him to do what he needs to do. He's like, you're sitting on a destiny that is waiting for you. I need you to move. And so the Lord keeps moving his hand and keeps provoking him against the Philistines. And Samson said this, he said that he should be blameless. He goes and catches 300 foxes. He takes torches, turns the fox's tail to tail, and puts a torch between each pair of the tails. Then he had set the torches on fire. He let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines. And it burned up both the stalks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. I don't even know how you catch 300 foxes. Caught 300 foxes, and he tied them tail to tail, lit a torch behind them, and let them go. Now I'm going to imagine you light one fox on fire, it's probably going pretty quick. You light two that are tied together, it's probably going everywhere. Now Peter might get mad about this, but I think that would be pretty funny to watch. Like just two just flipping through a cornfield, lighting it on fire. Alright? I told you he's clever and crafty. I don't think anybody else would have came up with that. And I don't think anybody else could have done that. Because I have a hard time catching one every time they're going after my chickens. Alright. So the Philistines went up and encamped in Judah and deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" And they answered, "We have come up to arrest Samson, to do what he's done to us." So I jumped ahead. So we're going to go to verse 3. jump to verse 6. This is why I probably skipped it. And they answered Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. So they punished the girl and her father for what had happened. And so then they go after Samson again. And Samson says, since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease. Do you see what he says? I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease. Do you understand that step by step, by step by step the whole time? Why does God keep having to provoke him to move? Because he knows what his mission is. He knows what he's been raised for. The angel of the Lord came to his parents and told him exactly why he's to be born. And yet, look, it's step by step by step. He will only go as far as he's provoked by the Lord. That's convicting for me. Because I do feel a level of me, I find myself there. Where I'm only going to go, like, does anybody find themselves, like, looking for signs to go talk to somebody? You're like, that person obviously needs a touch from the Lord. Lord, if it's your will, it's his will. Okay? He shouldn't have to provoke you every step of the way. If it already touched your heart, if you already said that person I should probably talk to, then you should probably talk to that person. Okay? And so don't take it personally. You're not any different than Samson. You just got to be provoked and to go to the next step. And after that I will cease. So he attacked them hip and high with a great slaughter, and then he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Edom. Now the Philistines went up and camped in Judah and deployed themselves against Lehi, and the men of Judah said, what have you come up against us? Okay, so basically they mount an army after this. And they answered, we have come to arrest Samson and do to him how he has done to us. And 3,000 men of Judah went to the cleft of the rock in Edom and said to Samson, do you know that the Philistines rule over us? What is it that you have done to us? So essentially, they're blaming him. They're saying, because you're fulfilling what the Lord has placed on your life, not the best execution of it, but you're starting a war, and they're blaming him for starting the war, not remembering that they have a God in heaven that will deliver them. And he said to them, as they have did to me, I have done to them. But he said to them, come, we have come to arrest you that we might deliver you into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not just kill me yourselves. And so they spoke to him, saying, no, but we will tie you securely and deliver you into their hand, but we will surely not kill you. And they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. So Samson actually has a very high level of maturity in the Lord. Whenever I say maturity in the Lord, I mean specifically trust. So he was going to intentionally bind himself. I'm assuming he never tried this before. He was going to intentionally let himself be bound, believing in God that God was to deliver him and set him free so that he could fight. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that was burning with fire. And his bonds broke loose from his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. The Lord can keep setting you up for success and keep pushing you in that direction. And He's never gonna leave you nor forsake you. But at some point you have to step out and go to work. At some point you have to go, okay, enough. I've got the point. And I also like this because we can apply this to the enemy realm, right? As Satan is constantly coming against you. And it's battle after battle after battle that you feel like you're losing. What does Samson do? Does he run? No. No matter what came at him, he responded over the top and kept pushing. He kept pushing. And then Samson wrote this. With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. Now I'm going to finish just this chapter, and then we'll talk a little bit. And so as it was, he had finished speaking, that he threw the jawbone from his hand and called that place Ramah-Lehi. Then he became very thirsty, and so he cried out to the Lord and said, You have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. And now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised. So God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out, and he drank, and his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore he called its name En-Hakor, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. And he drank, and his spirit returned, and he revived. He drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. So, in this battle, there's times where we feel like we're walking on clouds. There's times where we feel like we're getting beat down. There's times when it's hard to drag yourself out of bed. There's times where nothing can keep you in bed. But whenever you found yourself struggling, remember this part. He drank, his spirit returned, and he revived and went to war. That's why I think the Lord had me speak about passion today. Passion will drive you. Passion is a thirst. You can be the strongest man on the planet and achieve nothing. You can be the smartest man on the planet and do nothing with your intelligence. If you don't have a passion, if you don't have a drive, if you don't have an emotion that you almost have to turn off because it's driving you towards something great, then we can all stir this up and do a little bit better. We can find that goal. We can find that fire. We can quench that thirst. We can go after this. I don't want to get to heaven, and I don't want to have Jesus say, you could have moved that mountain, but you stayed in bed. I don't want to get to heaven and Jesus say, you could have saved that person, but you didn't go out and talk to them. You could have saw a wonderful, miraculous move of God work through you for a healing, but you didn't go and pray. And so how do we grab hold of some of this passion? It's the spiritual basics. And we keep reiterating this, we keep talking about this, we keep speaking on it to some extent, probably every week. You got to fall in love with him to be driven for his people. You need to spend the time in prayer. You need to spend the time in your Bible. And be willing to go out of your comfort zone. Or ask God for passion to push past your comfort zone. That's all I have for you guys.